I was 18 when my parents looked me in the eyes and said, "If you want to go to college, you'll have to be independent." They refused to give me a cent, yet just a year later, they paid for my little sister's entire education as if it was nothing. Can you imagine how it feels watching your dreams dismissed while someone else is handed everything? I left that night, carrying only a small suitcase and a heart full of broken pieces. I swore I'd never return, but 9 years later, I walked into my sister's wedding, and everything changed. If your parents told you to be independent when you needed them the most, but turned around and gave everything to your sibling, what would you feel? Would you stay and swallow the pain, or would you walk away forever? I was only 18 when it happened. The house still smelled like my mother's cooking that evening. Soy sauce, garlic, the faint aroma of ginger tea. I remember standing in the kitchen, holding the acceptance letter from the university I had worked so hard to get into. My hands were trembling with excitement, my chest filled with hope. I thought they would be proud, maybe even surprised, that their eldest daughter had made it on her own merit. "Mom, Dad," I said, voice cracking slightly. "I got accepted. I just need help with the tuition. If you could support me the same way you're planning to support Lily." Before I could even finish, my father's face hardened. "We told you before," he said flatly. "You need to learn to be independent. You're the eldest. You shouldn't rely on us." I blinked, confused. "But college is expensive. You're paying for Lily's degree. Why not help me too?" My mother crossed her arms. "Your sister is different. She's fragile. She needs us. You're stronger. You'll figure it out." It was like being slapped. For years, I had been the one helping with chores, taking care of Lily, cooking dinner, cleaning up, sacrificing. And now, when it was finally my turn to step forward, to chase my dream, they shut the door in my face. I looked at Lily, sitting on the couch with a brand new laptop they had bought her. She gave me a guilty smile but said nothing, not a word in my defense. Inside, my heart cracked. I wanted to scream, to demand why my love, my effort, my very existence always seemed to weigh less than hers. But I couldn't. The words tangled in my throat, and all that came out was a choked whisper. "So, I'm on my own." My father didn't even look at me. "Yes, that's what life is about. Independence. You'll thank us one day." Micro cliffhanger. And maybe he was right. I would thank them, but not in the way he imagined. That night, I packed my life into a small, battered suitcase. The rain outside was relentless, beating against the windows like a warning. I folded my few clothes neatly, tucked in my acceptance letter, and looked around my room one last time. The posters I had taped on the walls, the books stacked by my bed, the little paper cranes I used to fold when I couldn't sleep. They all seemed to mock me, whispering, "You don't belong here anymore." I dragged the suitcase down the stairs. My mother was in the living room, fussing over Lily's hair, adjusting the pearl clip she had just bought her. My father didn't even glance up from his newspaper. My heart sank, but my pride kept me standing tall. I forced a smile. "I'll be fine," I said. "Don't worry about me." They didn't answer. At that moment, something inside me hardened. I realized I could either keep waiting for them to see me, or I could go and build a life where I wouldn't have to beg for love or money. So I opened the front door. The rain was cold, soaking through my jacket instantly. My suitcase wheels rattled on the wet pavement as I stepped outside. My shoes were already muddy, my hair plastered to my face, but I didn't look back. For the first time in my life, I was truly alone. And yet, deep down, there was a strange flicker of relief. Maybe this is what independence feels like. Cold, painful, but also freeing. I hugged my arms around myself and kept walking. Every step away from that house was a step towards something unknown, terrifying but mine. As I walked under the rain, I wondered, would I ever regret this choice? Or would the pain I carried become the very fire that saved me later? Micro cliffhanger. At that moment, I had no idea that the man I stumbled upon that night would one day stand at the altar with my sister. The rain didn't stop for 3 days after I left home. I remember curling up in a cramped dorm room, my suitcase tucked under a narrow bed, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. Tuition was a mountain I had no idea how to climb. I worked in a cafe during the day, cleaned offices at night, and studied in the spaces between. There were nights when I came back so exhausted that I collapsed on the mattress without eating dinner. More than once, I fainted from hunger in the library, waking up embarrassed as strangers shook me awake. Mom said I needed to be independent, I whispered to myself one night, pressing my forehead against the cold window. Fine, I'll be independent. But why does it hurt this much to know my own family doesn't care if I fall? I had no one to call, no home to return to. Meanwhile, my phone screen glowed with photos my parents proudly posted online. Lily in her new dorm, Lily holding a brand new laptop, Lily with Dad's hand on her shoulder. I tried not to look, but the images burned into me. Every cup of coffee I poured for strangers, every dollar I scraped together, felt like a reminder that I was invisible to the very people who should have lifted me up. Months blurred into years. I worked harder than anyone around me. While my classmates spent weekends at parties, I stayed in the library or at my night job. I sewed clothes for extra money. I tutored high school kids in math. I skipped meals so I could afford textbooks. My hands grew calloused from washing dishes, my eyes heavy from lack of sleep. But I never gave up. Each sacrifice was a brick in the foundation of the life I was building alone. Then one night, everything shifted. The rain had returned, pouring down like it wanted to drown the city. I was walking home from the late shift, my cheap sneakers soaked through, when I heard the sound, metal crunching against metal, the sharp squeal of tires, and then silence. My chest tightened. I dropped my umbrella and ran toward the intersection. A car had slammed into a lamppost, its headlights flickering like dying stars. I saw a man slumped over the steering wheel, blood streaking down his forehead. Without thinking, I yanked the door open, my hands trembling. "Hey, can you hear me?" I shouted, shaking his shoulder. His eyes fluttered open, glassy with pain, and for a split second, they locked onto mine. There was fear there, but also something else. Relief, gratitude. Don't leave," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I won't," I promised, pulling him out as carefully as I could while the smell of gasoline stung my nose. Rain washed over his face as I held him steady, screaming for help. An ambulance arrived minutes later, but by then he was conscious, clutching my hand tightly. "Thank you. You saved me," he murmured, before the medics pulled him onto a stretcher. I wanted to ask his name. I wanted to know who he was. But the paramedics rushed him away, and all I was left with was the memory of his pale face and those haunted eyes. For weeks after, I caught myself thinking about him. Did he survive? Did he remember me? It was foolish, I told myself. I was just a stranger who happened to be there at the right time. Still, there was a strange comfort in knowing that, somewhere out there, a life went on, because I hadn't given up that night. Slowly, I found my rhythm. I graduated, late, yes, but on my own terms. I built a small career in finance, first as an intern, then as an analyst, then eventually with my own small but growing consultancy. I met people who valued me not for being someone's daughter or someone's sister, but for my mind, my persistence, my heart. I never told anyone about the young man in the rain. It was my secret, my reminder that even when abandoned, I still had the power to change someone's destiny. But life has a cruel sense of humor. 9 years after I walked away from my parents' house, a white envelope arrived at my office. The handwriting was familiar, my sister's. It was an invitation, her wedding. My chest tightened as I read the names printed in elegant silver letters. Her name and his. The man I had saved in the rain. My breath caught. The room spun for a moment. Could it be? After all these years, he's the one she's marrying. I laughed bitterly, a sound that startled even me. So this is the independence you wanted for me, Mom. To watch my sister marry the man whose life I once held in my hands. Micro cliffhanger, and in that moment I knew walking into her wedding would change everything, not just for me, but for them too. The invitation lay on my desk for hours before I even dared to open it again. My sister's name was written in glittering silver letters, her fiancé's beside hers. My parents had added a note in their neat handwriting. You must come. Don't embarrass us by refusing. We want the whole family together on her big day. I laughed bitterly when I read the word family. After 9 years of silence, 9 years of being erased, suddenly I was necessary. Not because they missed me, not because they loved me, but because appearances mattered. If you were in my place, would you go? Would you put yourself back in front of those who once told you that you were nothing? I told myself I was going only for Lily. She was still my sister after all. Whatever resentment I felt, she deserved my blessing. That's what I whispered to my reflection in the mirror the morning of her wedding, while I zipped up a simple but elegant navy dress I'd bought with my own hard-earned money. My hands shook slightly as I pinned my hair. I didn't want revenge. I told myself that over and over. I only wanted closure. The hotel where the ceremony was held glittered like a palace. Crystal chandeliers sparkled, violins filled the air, and guests in designer clothes mingled with champagne glasses in hand. For a moment, I felt like I had stepped into a movie set, except I wasn't a character. I was an intruder. I walked in quietly, clutching the small gift I had brought. Heads turned. Some of the guests recognized me from old family photos or from social media posts my parents had reluctantly shared years ago. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. There she is, someone muttered. Isn't that her sister, the one who disappeared? I heard she cut ties with the family. Why would she show up now? I lifted my chin, forcing myself to smile. My heart pounded so hard, it felt like it might break through my ribs. Then I saw them, my parents. My mother's eyes widened in shock before she quickly plastered on a smile, as if she had just spotted a long-lost friend instead of her own daughter. My father followed, his lips curling into something that was meant to be a grin, but looked more like a sneer. Oh, my mother's voice rang out. drawing more attention than necessary. So the missing piece finally decided to show up. The words hit me like a slap, the same sting as 9 years ago. My fingers tightened around the ribbon of the gift box, the missing piece, as if I had abandoned them, as if they hadn't shoved me out into the cold night, with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. I forced a calm smile. "Hello, Mom, Dad." My voice was steady, but inside I was trembling. Lily walked over in her white gown, glowing like a princess. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "You came," she whispered, almost disbelieving. There was a flicker of guilt there, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. She hugged me, perfumed and radiant, while my own dress smelled faintly of laundry detergent from the laundromat I had used the night before. The wedding guests clapped politely, some smiling as though they were watching a family drama unfold on stage. My parents, clearly pleased to be seen as magnanimous hosts, guided me to a table near the front. As the ceremony began, I tried to steady my breathing. The vows were about to be exchanged. The hall quieted as the groom stepped up to the altar, his tuxedo crisp, his posture proud. He turned to face the guests, and then his eyes landed on me. Time stopped, his smile froze, his hand trembled around the champagne glass he was holding. The crystal slipped from his grasp, shattering on the marble floor with a sharp, echoing crack. The room gasped in unison. He didn't look at Lily. He didn't look at the guests. His gaze stayed locked on me, wide, horrified, as if he'd just seen a ghost. And in that instant, I realized something was very, very wrong. Why was my sister's fiancé staring at me as though I was the one person he never expected to see again? Micro cliffhanger. What could he possibly be hiding? And why did his face drain of color the moment our eyes met? The crash of glass still rang in the hall when the groom's voice cut through the silence. His face had drained of every trace of color, lips trembling as though they could barely form words. She's the one," he stammered, pointing at me with a shaking hand. "She's the one who saved my life that night." Gasps spread through the crowd like ripples on water. Chairs creaked as guests leaned forward, eyes darting between me, the groom, and my parents. Lily froze mid-step, her bouquet trembling. For a moment, the wedding might as well have been a courtroom. I felt every stare press into me like needles. My mind reeled back to that rainy night, the broken glass, the smell of gasoline, the weight of his body leaning against mine. My heart pounded in my throat. He remembers. After all these years, he remembers. My father's jaw clenched. "What nonsense are you talking about?" he barked, his voice louder than necessary, as if volume could erase the truth. But the groom wasn't listening to him. His eyes never left me. 9 years ago, I crashed my car after leaving the hospital. I thought I was going to die, and then you were there. His voice cracked, heavy with emotion. You held my hand. You called the ambulance. I've been searching for you ever since. I didn't even know your name, until now. The hall erupted in whispers. The bride's fiancé? Saved by the bride's sister? I stood frozen, my gift still clutched in my hand. My sister's face shifted from shock to something sharper, panic. She looked at me, then at him, then back at me again. Her lips parted, but no words came. My mother was the first to recover. She forced a laugh, high and brittle. "Oh, darling, you must be mistaken. She left years ago. She never. I cut her off, my voice low but clear. "He's not mistaken. I reached into my purse and pulled out a thin folder. The paper inside had yellowed slightly with time, but the black ink was sharp, the signatures clear. My fingers brushed over the neat handwriting, my grandfather's final words, the ones I had clung to during the darkest nights. "This," I said, holding the folder up for everyone to see, "is Grandpa's will. The one you told me never existed." A murmur swept across the guests. I opened the folder and held up the notarized pages. He left his savings for both his granddaughters, for us to have an education, to have choices, but you hid it. You took it all and gave it only to her. Lily gasped, her bouquet falling to the floor. "Mom, Dad, is this true?" My father's face was scarlet now. He grabbed the armrest of his chair as if it could steady the shame pressing down on him. We did what we thought was best. She didn't need it. She was always strong." "Strong?" My voice broke, louder now. I begged for help. I studied every night until my eyes burned, worked 2 jobs just to keep a roof over my head, while you handed her everything on a silver platter. You didn't make me independent. You abandoned me. For a moment, I felt the heat of anger rising in me, but I forced myself to stop. I took a breath. My chest hurt, but I wouldn't let rage consume me. Not here, not today. I looked at Lily, who stood trembling, her mascara streaking down her face. She whispered, almost to herself, You saved him? All these years, you never told me?" The groom finally found his voice again. He looked at her, then back at me. If I had known, everything would have been different. The audience was silent, their eyes wide, waiting for me to speak again. I held the will out, placing it gently on the table in front of my father. "You wanted me to be independent. Congratulations, I am. I don't need your money anymore. But everyone here deserves to know the truth. The fortune you hid was never yours to give away." My mother tried to reach for the papers, but the groom's hand stopped hers. "No," he said firmly. "They need to hear this. Everyone does." The room felt heavy, filled with the weight of secrets that had been buried for almost a decade. I could see the judgment in the guests' eyes as they whispered, "So they lied? They stole from their own daughter?" I looked down for a moment, letting silence stretch. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to meet the crowd's eyes again. For 9 years, I carried the burden of being unwanted. I thought it was my fault, that maybe I wasn't enough. But tonight, I see the truth. It wasn't me who was missing from this family. It was compassion. The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp, micro cliffhanger. And as I turned my gaze back to my sister's fiancé, he took a step forward, his voice shaking as he said, "There's something else they never told you." The groom's words struck like a thunderclap. The entire hall seemed to tilt, chandeliers swaying in my vision. "He has been looking for me for 9 years?" My breath caught, but I forced myself not to show more than a flicker of surprise. I had trained too long to let emotions betray me. "I searched for you everywhere," he continued, his voice trembling. "Every night I prayed I'd find the girl who pulled me from that wreck. I thought she disappeared forever. But here you are, standing in front of me, and you." He turned toward my sister, his voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell me she was your sister?" Lily's face went pale, her lips quivering. I didn't know," she whispered, shaking her head. "I swear I didn't know." But her eyes darted to our parents, and in that glance I saw everything. She had known. Maybe not from the start, but she had known, and she had kept it from him. The guests leaned forward, hungry for more, their curiosity sharpening the silence. I could almost feel them asking the same question, burning in my chest. Why? That was when I slid the folder across the table. The groom's hands were still trembling as he picked it up. His eyes scanned the pages, widening with every line. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice rising. "It's the will," I said calmly. "Grandpa's last will. He left his savings to both me and Lily to help us study. But I turned my head toward my parents, my eyes locking with my father's, hid it from me. They told me it never existed. They took everything and gave it all to Lily." Gasps again, sharper this time. Guests were whispering openly now. I could see old family friends staring at my parents in disbelief. My mother's face flushed red, then white. "That's not true," she snapped. "We only wanted what's best." "Best for who?" I interrupted, my voice rising for the first time all night. "For me, who worked 3 jobs to afford textbooks, who fainted from hunger while you were busy buying Lily a new car? Or for Lily, who you smothered with everything I was denied?" Lily's mascara was streaking down her face. She clutched her wedding dress, shaking her head. "I didn't ask them to do it. The groom slammed the folder shut and turned to her. "But you knew. You told me your family sacrificed everything for you, that your parents worked day and night to put you through school. But this," he raised the papers in his hand, "this says it was never their sacrifice. It was her inheritance." The room buzzed with shock. I could hear murmurs. They stole from their own daughter? And they called her ungrateful? What kind of parents would do that? My father tried to stand, his chair screeching across the marble floor. "We did it for the family's future. She was always too headstrong, too proud. We knew Lily would make us proud, not her." I smiled faintly, but it wasn't joy. It was the calm of someone who had finally stopped bleeding. I looked at them and said softly, "You were right about one thing. I am independent now, but it wasn't because of your love. It was because I had no choice." For a brief moment, the weight of those words pressed down on everyone. I saw my mother's lips part, as if to respond, but no sound came out. My sister sobbed harder, mascara dripping onto her white gown. The groom turned back toward me, his eyes glassy. "You don't know what you mean to me," he whispered, voice cracking. Then louder, to everyone. "If it weren't for her, I wouldn't even be alive to stand here today." Another wave of gasps. Some guests covered their mouths, others exchanged horrified glances. The air was so heavy with tension, it felt like breathing underwater. Micro cliffhanger. He took a step closer to me, ignoring the bride's desperate grip on his sleeve. His voice dropped to a trembling whisper that still carried through the silence of the hall. "There's something else they never told you." The groom's words still echoed in the grand hall, trembling in the silence that had swallowed every laugh, every whisper. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't even be alive to stand here today. I could see the blood drain from my mother's face, her painted smile, cracking under the weight of the truth. My father's jaw worked furiously, his eyes darting from me to the document on the table, then to the guests whispering behind their champagne glasses. The proud patriarch of the family was suddenly a man, cornered, desperate for control. "This is absurd," he snapped, his voice rising. "She's twisting everything. We only wanted her to grow strong, to learn responsibility. That money, he jabbed a finger at the will in the groom's hand, was meant for Lily. She deserved it. She always did. The murmurs grew louder. A woman in the second row leaned over to her husband and whispered, but her voice carried. They stole their own daughter's future. How could they? My mother's eyes darted wildly around the room, searching for support, but found only disapproval. I could see it breaking her. She opened her mouth, but only a strangled sound came out. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. For a moment, the old me, the girl who had walked away, with tears mixing with rain, wanted to scream, to ask them how they could throw me away like trash. Instead, I stepped forward. My heels clicked against the marble floor, each sound sharp and deliberate, echoing in the silence. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply looked at them and spoke. Do you remember that night? My voice was calm, but inside I was shaking. I came to you begging for help. I wanted nothing but a chance. You told me I needed to be independent, that you wouldn't waste money on me. And you know what? You were right. I let the words hang there. Let the guests lean in. Let my parents look confused by my tone. Then I continued. I did become independent, but not because of your love, not because of your guidance. I became independent because I had no choice, because the two people who should have stood by me decided I wasn't worth it. The pain you gave me, it became the fire that forged me. A heavy silence fell again. I could feel the guests shifting in discomfort, some shaking their heads, some glaring at my parents. Lily's knees buckled slightly, and her bridesmaids rushed to steady her. She clutched her dress as though it might hold her upright. Her voice was a broken whisper. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say anything? I turned to her, my heart aching. Because it wasn't your fault. You were a child. You deserved love too. But I couldn't stay in a house where love was conditional. For a fleeting moment, I saw her eyes soften, then dart back to her fiancé, who was still holding the will, his knuckles white. He raised it high, his voice trembling but firm. Everyone here needs to know, this will is real. It proves her grandfather left her half of everything, and yet her parents stole it. They took her future, gave it to Lily, and called it love. Do you understand what that means? Gasps erupted again. A few guests rose from their seats, some with pity, others with outrage. My father slammed his fist on the table. Enough! This is my daughter's wedding. We won't be humiliated like this. But the truth was already out. The guests' eyes no longer saw him as a proud patriarch. They saw him as a man who had robbed one child to glorify another. I looked at him one last time. You wanted me gone, and I left. You wanted to erase me, but here I stand. I don't need your money, your approval, or your excuses. I am not your missing piece. I am complete on my own. The hall was silent, except for Lily's muffled sobs. I placed the gift box gently on the table beside the will. That's for you, Lily. I truly hope you're happy. But remember, happiness built on someone else's pain never lasts. I turned, my heels clicking against the marble floor again. The guests parted, creating a path for me. At the doorway, I felt a hand catch mine. I turned and found myself looking into the eyes I had once seen under the rain. His grip was firm but trembling, his face pale with something more than shock. Wait, he said, his voice raw. There's something else I need to confess, something they never told you. Micro cliffhanger. The entire hall held its breath As his words hung in the air, my heart pounded louder than the music. What truth could possibly shake him this much right at the altar?